What's going on, guys? It's week 4 waivers in this podcast or on this video or however you're consuming this. Welcome to week 4. Jason's out again this week. It's just me. So, as someone once said, F it, let's do it live. So, here we are, YouTube live recording again this week. Let's hit running backs, wide receivers, and a couple quarterbacks to consider as we go through week 4 waivers. I think the priority waiver ad this week is Jamaal Williams and not Khalil Herbert. Looks like DeAndre Swift is going to be out a couple weeks before their bye, and that means that the curse of Reggie Bush is going to continue, but that also opens the door for 44% roster Jamaal Williams on ESPN leagues. Go ahead and think about how weird this year has been, and now consider that Jamal Williams is currently RB7 on the year, and that's with Swift playing. So he's had at least 10 carries in every game so far. Home against Seattle, at New England the next 2 weeks before the bye week. If you're 0-3 and you have crappy running backs or it just isn't working out, I think he's the guy to go and get this week to get you through the next 2 weeks and try to get a win. I think up to 20% of FAB is reasonable if you're in a rough spot and are desperate to try to win each of the next 2 weeks. The previously mentioned Khalil Herbert, I think, is the second guy that should be added this week and will probably go for more FAB than Jamal Williams will in your league. Khalil Herbert rostered in 25.2% of leagues, coming off of basically a 30-point performance in half PPR leagues. He had 20 carries, 157 yards to go along with 2 catches and 12 yards with a touchdown. The next 3 weeks at the New York Giants, the Giants basically got run over by the Cowboys this week, at Minnesota, which isn't terribly scary, and home against Washington for my 2-1 pathetic Chicago Bears. David Montgomery is listed as day-to-day, and it seems like he's going to be the guy when healthy. So I don't know personally if I'd go more than 5% on Khalil Herbert because I do think Montgomery's still the guy there when healthy. But I do think you can justify 10 to 15% on Herbert due to the run-first Bears offense because they can't throw the ball, and they're not even trying to throw it. So they're just going to continue to run behind that offensive line and not trust Justin Fields. I don't think that this offense is going to score as much as the Lions, and that's why I have Jamal Williams in front of Khalil Herbert. Other guys to add, Alexander Mattison. He's only rostered in 37% of leagues. If you listen to us during the preseason, me and Jason talked about Dalvin Cook's ranking, and I said this exact line. I already can't wait until our week 5 or week 6 waiver wire show where we're talking about the fact that Madison's only rostered in 62% of leagues. Well, it turns out he's only rostered in 37% of leagues, and it's week 4. So I was close. Dalvin's popped his shoulder out, it's dislocated. I thought that it was taken care of during the offseason. That was obviously not the case. And so he dislocated again. Now he's going to be wearing a harness the rest of the season. And Madison should be rostered in more leagues than 37%. He's the best backup running back in the NFL. And I still think you can add him for free on your waiver wire if he's available. As far as wide receivers go, there's a couple guys that I do think merit your attention. The first one I want to highlight is Romeo Doubs. So Packers wide receiver, we need one to stand up. Sammy Watkins tried and he tore his hamstring or hurt his hamstring, and now he's on the IR. Randall Cobb is old. He's only 32, but it seems like he's been around forever. And Allen Lazard is clearly the best wide receiver there. But Romeo Doubs looked really, really great against a really good Tampa Bay defense this weekend. He's only owned in 16.1% of leagues, but the rookie had 8 catches on 8 targets. So I do think that, he has the most upside of any wide receiver that I'm going to be talking about this week, only because he has a Hall of Famer throwing to him. And, they compared him to Devontae Adams, but not really. So I just think that he is the guy that you want to add this week on the waiver wire from a wide receiver perspective. Again, I think up to 10% is fair. Other guys to talk about, Greg Dortch. So if Rondale Moore isn't going to play, then I think you have to add Greg Dortch. He's had double figures in every game, basically, if you count return yardage in your leagues. He had 10 targets this week. It's tough to ignore with the Cardinals' short passing game. Dortch is only owned in 7.3% of leagues and can probably be added for nothing because His name's Greg Dortch, and nobody really knows about him. You have to think he's going to be limited once Rondale Moore comes back, and especially when Hopkins comes back. But so far, so good. He's been a top 24 wide receiver so far. Greg Dortch. We're going to call him the Torch, right? I think that's fair. All right, a couple other guys. Russell Gage. Mike Evans was away. Russell Gage had a day. 13 targets, 12 catches for 87 yards, and he got annihilated on the touchdown catch in the fourth quarter against the Packers. Just a quick side note, I feel like Brady always just lays out his wide receivers. Nobody runs more crossing routes than Tom Brady teams, and he just does not seem to care if his wide receivers get destroyed. So Evans is going to be back this week, but even in week 2 when Julio was out and Godwin wasn't playing, Gage had 6 targets. He's rostered in 55% of leagues in a game against Kansas City where we don't know where that's going to be played because of the hurricane. If you're down in Florida, best wishes to all of you, and please stay safe. So I do think Russell Gage is worth a zero ad at absolute minimum. Another guy that has to be mentioned, I guess, is Devin Duvernay. He's wide receiver 11 on the year. He's only owned in 17.6% of leagues, and rightfully so. He has only had 4 more. He's not had more than 4 targets, and he only has 10 targets total this year. So that's just not. It's just not going to continue. I wouldn't add him. I wouldn't spend any fab on him if you do decide to add him. I think it's just a flash in the pan. It's not going to continue. Other guys to mention quickly: Michael Gallup, Rondale Moore, Joshua Palmer had almost 100 yards. Well, that entire offense is basically banged up. Mac Hollins had 158 yards and a touchdown while Hunter Renfrow was out and is possibly worth an add if that's going to continue. A couple quarterbacks to talk about. One, Trevor Lawrence. I don't really like the matchup with the Eagles this week at Philly, but home against Houston, at Indianapolis, and home against the Giants is pretty solid after that. He's got a top 10 wide receiver in Kirk. The Jones brothers are there. Evan Ingram has kind of been at least a little bit resurgent after he had a down week this week. And he has 2 good backs that you can dump the ball in the backfield. So I think that'll play. So Trevor Lawrence is the quarterback to add. And then one other guy that I do think bears mentioning is Deshaun Watson. He gets the awful Baltimore secondary the first week of the playoffs. New Orleans in week 2 of the playoffs, and then at Washington. The only thing that really scares you, maybe other than New Orleans defense, is the weather. If you're 3-0 or if you've lost Trey Lance, I don't think that it's too early to at least consider adding Deshaun Watson. You can add him for 0. I think he's going to be talked about for the next, handful of weeks at least on every waiver wire show, or at least in my opinion, he should be. He comes back in week 13. So he's not a great person, but that doesn't mean you can't win money with him. So he's only owned in 13% of leagues. And I think you're going to slowly see that rise over the next 7, 8, 9 weeks until he comes back. So that is week 4 waivers. Again, thank you guys for watching, listening. Jason hopefully will be back next week. He's in the process of moving. So please like, comment, subscribe. Give any feedback that you have. We really appreciate your support. And best of luck in week number 4.